I remember the day it all shattered. The day my dreams were deemed absurd, and my worth was publicly questioned. Standing in the austere confines of the university auditorium, my mentor's words sliced through me like a knife. This is not serious research. It's a trivial hobby, a naive fantasy. The laughter that erupted from my peers felt like shards of glass embedded in my skin. I had dedicated years to studying desert plants, envisioning a world where open spaces could nurture life. Yet, in that moment, I was reduced to a punchline. I left academia that day, my heart heavy, but my resolve hardening. I was done with the disdain of those who could only see the world through their narrow lenses. I turned my back on the sterile classrooms and the suffocating expectations, and I ventured into the gritty, sun-soaked landscape of my city. I became an urban agriculturist, a title that had once made my family scoff. What a ridiculous dream, they'd said, rolling their eyes as I shared my aspirations of turning rooftops into lush gardens. You'll never make it. You're just embarrassing yourself. But I clung to that dream like a lifeline. I found a dilapidated rooftop on a crumbling building, surrounded by concrete and chaos, and I began to plant. Each seed I sowed felt like a defiance, a rebellion against the mockery that had haunted me for years. I faced ridicule from strangers, from neighbors who couldn't understand my vision. What's the point? They'd ask, shaking their heads. I was seen as a misguided idealist, a fool chasing after something that seemed utterly futile. But with every sprout that pushed through the soil, I felt a surge of purpose. I learned the art of urban farming, studied sustainable practices, and transformed that barren rooftop into a vibrant ecosystem. I spent countless nights under the stars, tending to my plants, my heart swelling with hope. Slowly, I began to attract attention. Local farmers' markets opened their doors to my produce, and my urban farms started to catch the eye of environmentalists and city planners alike. It was exhilarating, but I had no time to revel in success. There was still so much to do. Years passed, and with relentless dedication, my efforts blossomed into something monumental. I pioneered a movement, a wave of urban sustainable farming that swept through the city like a breath of fresh air. Cities around the world began to take notice of the potential hidden in their rooftops and vacant lots. I was invited to speak at conferences, sharing my vision of transforming food deserts into thriving gardens, and I was met with applause rather than jeers. Yet amid the accolades, I felt a void. My family had never acknowledged my success, their scorn still echoing in my mind. I decided it was time to return home, to show them what I had built and what I had become. As I drove into my childhood neighborhood, memories flooded back, their laughter, their derision, the way they had turned their backs on my dreams. I parked in front of the house, my heart racing. The familiar sight of my childhood home now felt foreign, like a ghost from another life. I stepped out of my car, the sunlight glinting off the green produce I had brought. Fresh tomatoes, vibrant greens, and fragrant herbs, all grown from the very rooftops they had mocked. As I approached the front door, I hesitated, the weight of their judgment still heavy on my shoulders. But I knocked, and the door swung open to reveal my mother. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she took in the sight of me. Older, certainly, but more importantly, radiant with purpose. I held up the produce, my heart pounding. "I'm back," I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside. "What is this?" she asked, her brow furrowing. I stepped inside, and soon my father and siblings gathered, their expressions a mixture of confusion and apprehension. I could feel their skepticism hanging in the air. "I started an urban farming movement," I said, laying out the produce on the kitchen table. "I've turned rooftops into gardens. I've helped feed communities." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as they picked up the tomatoes, their skepticism slowly giving way to curiosity. "These are beautiful," my mother finally said, her voice softening. "Where did you get them?" "I grew them," I replied, my heart racing with both fear and exhilaration. I shared my journey, the struggles, the nights spent alone, the victories that had once felt so distant. I could see the gears turning in their minds, the realization dawning that perhaps I hadn't been so foolish after all. Then came the moment I had longed for. My father, a man who had never been one to admit fault, looked me in the eye. "We were wrong," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I should have supported you." It was a quiet admission, but it reverberated through the room, shattering the years of derision. My heart swelled with a mix of relief and joy. I had proven my worth, not just to them, but to myself. As we sat around the table, tasting the fruits of my labor, I felt a warmth spread through me. My family was finally embracing my journey. And in that moment, I understood that the path to redemption wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about learning to forgive, to accept, and to grow. Looking out the window at the sprawling city, I realized that every bit of struggle, every drop of sweat had led me to this moment. I was not just an urban agriculturist. I was a pioneer, a dreamer who had transformed derision into a thriving legacy. In that kitchen, surrounded by the people who had once doubted me, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. I had not only reclaimed my dreams, I had created a future where those dreams could flourish.